Welcome, Wim, as my guest here.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Wim Vermeulen is a partner in the company BUBKA. What is your personal perspective on sustainability?
Indeed, my name is Wim. I am a author. I'm a documentary maker, all on sustainability, and sort of my mission is use the power of communication to change the norms.
Okay, so it appears that you're really a specialist in sustainability. And I assume the company BUBKA is then also organized around sustainability. So how does BUBKA work and how do you integrate the sustainability in the company?
Yeah. So BUBKA is originally a communication agency. Mm-hmm. We still are. But we have a growing strategic and research department. Because what we concentrate on is helping businesses identifying the frictions in their transition, and help solve those frictions with communication. And the frictions are on different levels. There's the corporate reputation is a level, and then the second level is business modeling. Advertising and stakeholder engagement. And those are the 4 domains we concentrate on and we do a lot of research on to understand what the rules are on corporate reputation, advertising, business modeling and stakeholder engagement in the transition. Because we are at the sort of end of the beginning of the transition. Mm-hmm. And what we mostly do is take the rules of the conventional world, okay, and try to apply it in the transition world. Yes. But because we have no idea what the transition will take us to, we know that it's not always right to use the same rules. So what we do is we research what the new rules for corporate reputation are, the new rules for business modeling, et cetera, and that's what we do.
All right. That sounds really interesting, although still a bit theoretical for me. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. And then I'm looking at the consumer, basically. Do you think customers still believe in sustainability claims?
Well, consumers never really believed in sustainable claims.
Okay. So the word still is in question here.
Yeah. So there is one of the things that we research quite a lot and that we start to understand the magnitude of the problem, of the risk, is that indeed, if you ask consumers, who do you rely on to take us through the transition? Then only 9% says that they trust politicians.
Okay.
Yeah. So 83% of consumers say we look at businesses. And why did we look at businesses? Because for them, there's a sort of aligned agenda. Businesses need to continue. And need to thrive. And so businesses need to have transition plans to adapt to the transition. Just like consumers have to do, because consumers want to have better lives for their children, et cetera, et cetera. So, and sort of those agendas for consumers are aligned, and they think, well, businesses have the money more than politicians, have the leadership more than politicians, can handle big projects worldwide. And so they look especially at businesses to take them and us through the transition. Now, the contradiction is 83% of the consumers are looking at businesses, but when businesses say this is what we do, this is how we take our responsibility, then in Belgium only 6.4 consumers believe that. Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
a huge credibility gap, and the reason, of course, for that is that the business world doesn't have a really good track record in saving the world. So they helped sort of bringing us where we are now and the troubles that we are now.
Yeah.
And so if you all of a sudden change your point of view and say, well, now we're going to save the world, it's not very credible.
Yeah.
And so. So 6.4, only 6.4 believes people that they when a business takes shows or wants to show how it takes its responsibility. So only 6.4 believes it, and that has a major influence on everything, on corporate reputation, on how you model your value, how you bring, what products do you bring to consumers, on advertising and on stakeholder engagement.
So, seems like the consumers are very skeptical. I assume you help then companies to try to convince the consumers to trust the companies and their claims. How exactly do you try to do that?
Yeah, there's 5 things that drive credibility, and that consumers want to recognize in how business communicate. The first one is honesty. So being honest, and honest is not, a marketeer thinking he's honest. It's the other way around. A consumer thinking that the company is honest. There's 2 different things. So honesty is one thing. The second thing is commitment. Does a consumer or do consumers feel that this company that talks to them is really committed to the transition? A third one is, and that's a strange one for marketeers and for business people, is the urgency. Consumers are very much aware of the urgency of the transition. And they are very much aware that we are a little bit too late. And they have that from, the news. They hear it in the news. There's a flood there. In Valencia now it's 27 degrees in January, so it's summer in winter. So people understand that the climate or the weather is a bit mixed up. Every year there's the COP, and then every year they need to go into the weekend, and then they end up with not having a good agreement. So people understand that it's going not so well. And so what they want to understand from companies is that those companies understand the urgency of the whole thing. But that's something we need to learn to work with, because that's, of course, never in the brief. No marketeer comes with a brief that says, focus on the urgency. Make people understand that we understand the urgency. That's sort of one of the new rules. The fourth one is the proof points. Don't just claim that you are there to help us through the transition. Bring proof. It doesn't have to be, the complete transition. But companies don't have to come in and say, we fixed it. This is what we do, and we're 100% through our transition. It's not that. It's just bringing proof points of what you do. And then the last thing is shared value. People want to know. People are okay with, for you as a company to create value for yourself, but they need to understand the value for society too.
Yeah.
And so these are the 5 rules. It's new. It's very new in, for example, advertising, because advertising always worked with the dramatizing the benefit technique. So take toothpaste advertising. Toothpaste advertising is not credible at all, because toothpaste advertising says, if you use this toothpaste, in 3 weeks' time, your teeth will be crystal white.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I tried that also before.
Yeah. See? And so it never works. It never works, but it doesn't matter, because it's taking a benefit and dramatizing it, and people read the language. They know it's not going to be like that. But they're thinking, well, if it's just a little bit more or less gray, it's going to be cool too, so I'll buy it. And I will not return it to the shop afterwards. because my teeth are not crystal white.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That also refers to the honesty you mentioned
Yes.
earlier. Yeah.
Yes. And so if you then touch upon the biggest problem humanity ever had, and you use the dramatizing the benefit technique,
Yeah.
then you're basically greenwashing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What does, in your opinion, a good sustainability claim look like?
it depends on the industry. It depends on, if you're talking about an effort that a company is doing, a pledge or a product. But basically what we see happening is we are entering a different phase in how companies talk about sustainability and how they formulate their claims. In 2020, 2021, that was 5 years after the Paris Agreement, we were sort of in the moral pledge phase. So the big companies came in and said, we're going to halve our emissions for 2030. We're going to go net zero in 2050. Of course, that was a pledge. It was very difficult at that time to have a plan to do that. So most of the businesses made the pledge without really knowing how to do that.
Yeah. Well.
But that was the moral duty phase. We have a moral duty, and we want to express that with this sort of sustainability promise that we're going to keep. Some of those companies need to come back from that and say, now we have the plans and we hit the wall.
Yeah,
And
they actually see that the pledge they made is not as easy to accomplish.
Yeah. Of course, there's new regulation that makes it difficult,
indeed.
more difficult too. And so, of course, the situation changed. So it's really difficult to keep your pledge. But then again, it's okay as long as you keep the transition going. You're fine.
Yeah.
You're good as a company. But that phase, that's done. That's done.
Okay.
The moral duty phase is done. Now we're more in the risk phase, where companies really understand or start to understand how risky it all is, and try to mitigate the risk. And that's on different levels. First is a lot of people are now sort of green hushing. So no longer talk
Green
about
hushing.
Yeah, green hushing. So they prefer not to talk about their transition and what they do for the transition, pushed by the legal departments.
Okay.
Because the legal departments on reporting, on communication, because the EU and different watchdogs are coming with really tough anti-green washing rules. More companies, big companies, start to prefer not to talk about what they do, so that they don't take the risk to be called out as a greenwasher.
But there's still the work still goes on behind the scenes, but they don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of energy spent on the transition inside the companies, but the legal departments are like, don't talk about it, because the rules of greenwashing are not completely 100% clear yet. There's a Green Claims Directive, there's a Consumer Protection Directive, there's local anti-greenwashing rules. And so it's a bit of a very complex, messy situation. And so the legal department says, hush, don't talk, because otherwise we take the risk of being called a greenwasher. And that is a PR disaster, so let's not take the risk. That's one thing. The other risk is, of course, a infrastructure risk. And a lot of companies have noticed that since the EU has announced that they will stress test all the public infrastructure in the EU for 3 degrees in 2050. And that's all of a sudden, it's like, why are they doing that? Are they really and they seem to be really serious about that. And of course, we need to, because companies need to stress test their infrastructure, their factories, their the mobility, the value chain. They need to do that because we are the fastest warming continent on the planet for the moment. So we are
Really? Okay.
in Europe we're going to be at 3 degrees in 2050. That's not good. So it's going to get really worse before it's getting better. And so that's another risk. That's the transition risk, the physical transition risk.
Yeah.
And then of course the third risk is the consumer risk. And that's a political risk. What you see happening in Spain with the floods, it's getting politically weaponized because radical right, although they say climate change is not caused by humans, this sort of recuperating the unrest, and that's gonna. Those opportunities,
the same as with the fires in California, I assume.
Yeah. And as those opportunities will multiply, it might lead to social unrest too.
This all starts sounding very complicated to companies. Moreover, if it's the case that that companies don't want to talk about their efforts anymore, then the risk is also that companies will decide not to put so much money anymore in the whole sustainability because it will not bring any money, at least not on the short term.
Yeah. That is the signal and the noise. The signal is what I just said, 3 degrees 2050. The noise is the greenwashing, legal departments that say, it's too risky to talk, etc. On the other hand, there's a huge opportunity, and some businesses totally understand that. Because we're at the end of the beginning of the transition, there's a huge opportunity to lead.
Yeah.
And some companies take that opportunity with both hands.
Okay.
And so they don't look, for them, there's no question that they would ever greenwash.
Yeah.
Because if it's in their DNA of being sustainable.
Yeah.
And that varies. You guys have you have sustainability in your DNA. I just come from London and I saw that a new company called Oddbox, and Oddbox is a fruit box with odd fruit. So and odd fruit is normally what you don't get in the supermarket, and so their thing is instead normally this fruit will go to waste. Yeah. We just put it in a box, and you can order it, and it's not going to look like the apples that you have in the supermarket, but it is as good.
And you will enjoy more and laugh about it more, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they are fully into sustainability because their claim is less food waste. Yeah. But because people understand that and can imagine that, it works.
Yeah.
So now is a time for, not every business will do that, but if you want to lead, well, now is the time to lead, because if your competition is silent and you are brave and you talk about it and you position yourself on it, it's going to create a real gap with your competition that is silent, and that's a big opportunity.
Yeah. So your advice as a specialist in communication would then be to not shut your mouth, but speak out and go faster than the others do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the title of my last book. Speak Up Now.
Okay.
And that's exactly it's a huge opportunity for people to speak.
Speak up now or remain silent forever or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Now, greenwashing thing, it's also a very bizarre thing because it makes the risk that it wants to mitigate, it only makes it bigger. Because what we now see with consumers is two things. Because politicians are looking for the pause button and are silent, and because companies greenhush, consumers are like, hold on, there's one or one of two things. Either they don't talk about it because they have it under control and the problem isn't there yet. Great. So I don't have to do anything. I'm not asked to do anything. I'm, voluntarily I won't do anything because probably they have it under control.
Yeah.
The other opinion is they don't talk about it because it's so big and so complex and it looks so bad that they don't want to talk about it because otherwise, we will have another yellow vest and we're going to have a revolution.
You open up a box of Pandora then, if you start talking about that.
And so greenwashing reinforces either I'm not going to do anything because it's being handled, or I'm paralyzed because they don't dare to talk about it.
Yeah.
Either way, it doesn't help. What we need now is not 3 million climate activists that live the 1.5 lifestyle on 100%.
Yeah.
We need 400 million people that live 20% of the 1.5 lifestyle. That will change stuff. So we absolutely need people to move.
Yeah, you need everybody on the same side. Now is the opportunity, you're saying. Then I'm wondering, so we are in that period. I guess there will be a next period where, again, people get more and more convinced. Do you have an estimate on the time it will take to come to that next phase? Or do companies, just my question actually is, do companies have still time to act? And of course they have to act now, but how much time do they have, you think?
That's very difficult to say.
Yeah.
Because even the climate scientists don't know.
Don't know themselves.
It's difficult. What we know is that the flooding, the heat will continue, and we're going to have it more extreme and more frequent. Yeah. But the problem is that you can't predict where it's going to be. There's stuff going on. But again, if you want to lead, you need to lead now. Yeah. And you can model if you're a B2C company, you can model where the growth will come from. Yeah. And taking into account the relevancy of your offer, the credibility of your claims, etc., etc. So you can model that. There's really no reason why you wouldn't, start the modeling and try to start to lead. So your advice basically would be to every company out there, regardless the sector, if they didn't start now, but start simple. Just step by step, but do start. Yeah, that's basically what you are saying, right? Yeah, I think there is quite a lot of greenwashing incidents. One of the reasons probably that companies that aren't greenwashing are also starting to be afraid. But in your opinion, what can we learn from those greenwashing incidents? I refuse to believe that people actually want to greenwash. Maybe in the finance industry, because there with ESG, there was a lot of greenwashing going on voluntarily. But I can't imagine with marketeers that they actually would voluntarily start to greenwash. What I see is, however, is a lack of discipline.
Okay.
It's not difficult not to greenwash. You just have to master and manage the rules. The rules, even if no rules are coming, you can know what the rules are today, and you know which rules are coming from the EU within 2 years. So it's basically not that difficult to understand which of those rules apply to what you want to do, and have the discipline to respect them.
Yeah.
Huh? And so there shouldn't be any greenwashing cases at this time. That there were greenwashing cases 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That was sort of expected because the rules were very unclear then.
Yeah.
But since then, everybody looked at it. Everybody, a lot of experts looked at it and said, well, what they mean exactly is this, this, and this. So really today, if you would greenwash today, it's really a lack of discipline.
Yeah. Okay.
So the greenwashing will go away.
Yeah. So that goes along with what you said earlier, the phases, that this phase, in this phase, greenwashing is like fading out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like fading out. Yeah.
I think I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, the legal department won't allow you to take that risk. So you will need to have the discipline. The other thing is, and that's another thing that will help, is the whole reporting bit. So a lot of companies are working on their CSRD reporting, the big companies.
Yes.
Now, the interesting part, I'll come back to the regulation within a minute, but the interesting part on the CSRD report is that at the end you need to say, according to the taxonomy, EU taxonomy, X% of my turnover is sustainable, X% of my CapEx is sustainable, and X% of my OpEx is sustainable. Those numbers won't be very impressive. It'll be about 8% of my turnover is sustainable.
For the time being, it will be low figures. Yeah.
Yes, and it will be 12% of my capex. But investors and banks will look at it on industry level, and they will look at all the companies in a certain industry, and they will look at this one is 8% turnover. The other one is 12% turnover. So, okay, that the other one, the second one is better. But the first one is investing 20% in CapEx. The other one, 2%. For the future, it looks the other way around. So where will I invest in? The first one. But then, other than that, people will look at turnover and expect that turnover to grow. Yeah. And so next year, 26 and 27, a lot of CEOs will go to their CMOs and say, hi guys, we need to have our turnover to grow, to get more sustainable. What are you doing? What are the new revenue streams? Because the conventional revenue streams need to go down. Yeah. And what are the revenue streams that you are bringing that will transition and that will grow, and sort of compensate for the decrease in conventional revenue streams. And then that will be I think, where we will unleash marketing power. Yeah. Then that will be the first time that the really big marketeers that know the craft, that they will say, okay, let's go. Let's go for it. Now we need to get going.
Interesting. There is a lot of things happening behind the scenes. I want to ask one important last question to you, since you are here. What, in your opinion, are the biggest challenges, but also the biggest opportunities for brands aiming to take sustainability seriously in their messaging, in their marketing for the future, I mean?
I think the biggest opportunity for businesses that want to take the lead is to counter the impression that consumers have that the transition means consuming less and stop doing things like they do now. It's the whole degrowth thinking. It's the whole, the transition means you have to stop doing things that you like.
Yeah.
And we need to counter that because it's not true. It's not true. It's the transition doesn't mean from the 100 things that you do, there's 90 things that you need to stop.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's just. It's having a different, doing things differently, but not less.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, if the 1.5 lifestyle looks a lot like my grandfather's lifestyle. He had, 3 pairs of shoes. One for the week, one to go to work, and one for Sunday. He had 2 pairs of suits, one for the week to go to work, and one for the Sunday. So we just don't need 20 pair of shoes. We don't need 20 pair of plastic shoes.
No.
We don't need the luxury of, going to a website, select 7 pieces of clothing, have them delivered the next day, fit them at home, then decide that, none of those fit, and send them
I was
back.
going to say 1 pair fits, but...
Yeah. Well, anyway, and then send the rest back for free.
Yeah, that's
it's
what's happening.
completely useless. But for consumers, it's pretty convenient. For the planet, it's a pretty disaster.
Yeah.
So, we don't need that.
No.
We really don't need that. And there's plenty of things that we actually don't need. And if you're gonna take them away, nobody will complain. Nobody will complain that you can order your clothes and have to wait 5 days to get it delivered. Nobody will complain about that. Nobody will complain. Everyone will understand that if you then want to send 3 pieces back, that you have to pay for it. Of course, you have to pay for it. And so it's very important that people understand that it's just doing stuff differently, but it doesn't have to hurt. Eating less meat doesn't hurt. It really doesn't hurt. Eating more plant-based is actually pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But we sort of position it as we're gonna take your meat away, and it's like, no, we're not gonna take your meat away. You need to eat vegetables. Of course, we. That's what my mom said.
Yeah.
Eat your vegetables. Eat your greens.
Yeah.
And that is a big task that we have, and it has to come from the business world because when it comes from politics, it'll be orders and pointing the fingers, and that will not motivate people. It has to come from the business world. The Odd Box is really cool example.
Yeah.
It's a really cool example. It's very friendly. It's not pointing the finger. It's really like, it's funny fruit, but it's fruit and it's really tasty. So go on. And that's the big opportunity, but also the big task that businesses have.
Yeah.
Make people understand it's not about less, and it's not about pointing the finger, and it's not about you really need to completely change your lifestyle. It's doing things differently.
Yeah. And then I would like to come back to what you said in the beginning of the answer of your question about the shoe brands. You don't need 20 pairs of shoes. You only need 3 or 4 or 5 or 7. Let's find a decent figure. But I don't think the shoe brands, as they do business today, will like that answer. So that means they don't need to change their communication. They need to change their business model, probably.
Yeah, and they will. They will, because it's a question. So the problem just with plastic shoes is it's really not so expensive to produce. But it's not expensive to produce because you don't take the negative externalities, so the cost of climate and the cost of nature. They don't take that. They don't have to pay for that. They don't have to pay for the damage that plastic shoes do to nature and to biodiversity and to climate. We will change that. There is a carbon. The carbon tax is already there, but the carbon tax will be there. There will be a cost of nature. You will have to pay for using the natural resources. Once that they need those costs into account, they broke. They broke. So they will need to. They will need to make their business model evolve. They will need to find other solutions, and that means that shoes will become more expensive. Not because they are hyper cool or hyper trendy, but because it's gonna cost more to produce them.
They're produced in a different and more sustainable way.
Yes,
and those taxes are not there yet. Let's hope they come. The sooner the better. But again, here, the idea, the good idea for the companies is to start again now and start simple in also changing the way they produce, the way they think about doing business. I would assume.
That's something that you see with family businesses, because family businesses think differently. They think in dividends for the 5th, 6th, 7th generation, and so they know. They know that there will be a cost of nature and a cost of climate, and they will be asked to compensate for that. And so those family businesses are already now taking into account it's going to be a carbon tax of X%, the cost of nature of X%. So how will we manage? Now, what do we need to do now? So within 5 to 10 years, if those taxes are there, so that we will still thrive. So family businesses are completely in that model already. It's just the stock run companies that focus on the short term,
short-term
and
profit.
don't think, and don't think.
So I believe we can talk for a couple of hours here. I think we should finish. You briefly mentioned that you wrote a book. Probably you wrote already a couple of books. But maybe we didn't discuss this before. So your last book, what is it about? And
speak of now. So it's aimed at marketeers, and my message is really, we need to speak up. You guys need to speak up. The first part of the book is a bit depressing, because I'm tuning into. I want marketeers to understand what the problem is, because I don't think marketeers can come up with the solutions and won't recognize the opportunity if they first don't know what the problem is.
What the problem is,
So I'm talking about the Paris Accord, about the COPs, about regulations, etc., etc. Everything that stops us from moving forward. And then the second part of the book is...
Don't spoil it.
No. The second part of the book is plenty of examples. Really, plenty of examples of businesses that are going fully in, and how they do that, what they do, and how they manage it, and how people react, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So, how to put the transition into your DNA, and the third part is on the credibility, because it's so important that marketeers starts to measure and manage the credibility, because it's, as I said, it defines your corporate reputation, your brand reputation, the engagement of your stakeholders. It really defines everything, and that's something that many people don't take it into account today, and that's hurting.
Okay, well, then we will end this podcast. Thank you for being here. And I'm immediately taking off, go to the bookstore and buy your book, Wim. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.